Hey, everybody. Now, this is a pre-record because we need to jump on this stuff right away. We're going to be talking about the Trump stuff, and obviously we don't normally do this, but when the story is so big, we just can't ignore it. But here's the thing. We're still going to be here in the background monitoring comments, and we'll be around during this when this goes live. But right now, we're pre-recording it because we have a special guest.
We do. Our dear friend that we got to work with at the convoy and that you all totally recognize, I'm sure by now, the sniper that had the horrible job of, defending our PM,
Right.
who walked away from his job because he had a lot more integrity and courage within him than what his job actually required, is joining us today to talk about the shot that was heard all around the world yesterday.
Right. So please welcome, I would say now a good friend as well, Danny Bulford. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you guys.
You too. You've been on the show once before, and you've been here for dinner, and that was much more pleasant than doing a show. But now you're all the way down to Alberta, and you're back again for very good reasons tonight.
Well, my phone blew up last night and this morning. Sure. People, it's like, what do you think is going on?
Okay, so just for the uninitiated, why don't we tell people, give them a little bit of your background and why we asked you here tonight? It'll be obvious once we share your background.
Yeah, sure. I mean, everyone right now who saw what happened with Trump is questioning what happened with the Secret Service, and probably specifically why it took so long how did the shooter get into a position undetected before he was engaged by the Secret Service counter snipers.
Yes.
And I specifically am qualified to kind of speak to that because I did that job full time for 8 years in Ottawa for the RCMP. Our whole program was basically created based on the Secret Service model. The team trained with the Secret Service in protective operations before I ever transferred there. But in my time in Ottawa, I got to work directly with many foreign heads of state, like dignitaries coming to visit Canada. I got to work with some of their security service, including the Secret Service, on multiple occasions for the Obama administration, the Trump presidency, and the Vice President Pence, both in Ottawa. And when I deployed to the APEC summit in Papua New Guinea, I got to work with the Secret Service and some Navy SEALs while I was there. So I have a pretty good idea of how the Secret Service operates. I don't know exactly what their posture is for a presidential candidate, but I'm very familiar with the package, like the different personnel, the different roles that they would fill, and the number of resources that they would throw at an event involving a president or vice president. Although I did see Trump speak earlier this year in Washington, D.C. at CPAC. So that was an interior venue, but the security on the day that he was there was way beyond anything that was there on the days that he wasn't. Like, we had to be there early in the morning, stand in line, and it was just like an airport process, right? Like, you go through the metal detectors, they wand you, they have metal detectors to put all of your belongings through. So it was just like the airport, just like you'd have at an airport before you could even get access inside the venue. And then when you were inside, you couldn't even leave to go to the bathroom without risk of being locked out. Like, if you left, you weren't allowed to come back in. And so we sat there for 2 hours once we got inside, just waiting for him to come take the stage.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So how would that work on an open air situation like that? I mean, from what I saw, there weren't really a lot of fencing, and so how would they, secure the metal detectors and all that in that setting?
I don't know if you'd be able to do that for a big open air venue. To get access up close,
Right.
You could do metal detectors just like they've done on Parliament Hill ground for Canada Day type thing before, right?
Right.
But outside of that area, it's going to be somewhat uncontrolled, right? So what you would do to mitigate that is you would have layers and layers of security, right? Like you'd have like the bodyguards and like the more tactical element right in close to the protectee. And then outside that, you'd probably have like local law enforcement, you know, and then you might even have like private security companies as well being employed, or like bylaw services, people like that as like outer layers.
Right.
So, I mean, like we've done lots of outside protective events, like the big ones, Canada Day, Remembrance Day, stuff like that. And so it's multiple agencies working together and multiple layers of security.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we should just start by the incident and then kind of work our way out, because as you uncover layers, it gets a little more suspect as we go. So here's the actual incident. And for those of you who might be squeamish, then just letting you know that this is not totally graphic, but there, you know, there's violence.
Something that said, take a look at what happened. Oh.
Hold. When you're ready, on you.
Ready?
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Hawkeye's here.
Hawkeye's here. Move it to the spare.
Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready? Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move?
We're
Let's
clear.
move. Let's move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head, it's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down. My shoes.
Watch out.
Wait.
So that's basically the incident there. Did anything look out of the ordinary for their standard reaction?
No, not really. I mean, obviously they're gonna swarm him. Even we used to joke about the bodyguards being like meat shields, right, or bullet sponges.
Yep.
They're gonna cover him up. I mean, because they're all wearing body armor as well, right? I mean, it's not going to stop every firearm, but it's going to provide him some level of protection.
Right.
And then once they have him secured, they're going to bring in extra resources to help extract him.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they were going to pull him out, and he hauled him off, and that's when he did the fist pump,
which is going to like just go down in history as an iconic image, right?
Of course, yeah. They're already making paintings, and yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just going to make his popularity soar even more.
Right, exactly right. So that was 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. This is a post by Laura Loomer. We'll get into that in a little bit, but this is him in high school. That was a few years ago, and I guess he's donated to the Democrats. He has done a manifesto video that was done a little while ago. So this is the kid that has taken shots at Trump.
Yeah, the 20-year-old kid. And what's funny is that, you know, he did donate $15 to the Liberal campaign group Act Blue in 2021, but he is a registered Republican voter, which was kind of interesting. And everybody said he is a quiet, kind of loner, really good at history and math and science. In fact, won a $500 math and science award when he graduated. And other than that, he just kind of stayed by himself, quiet kitchen worker, and that's it. And when I hear all of that, what comes to my mind is MK Ultra. This poor
That's
kid.
exactly what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking. But I mean, like, you know, Justin Bork, the guy who shot the 5 Mounties in New Brunswick, killed 3, wounded 2. He had no criminal history. He was just a quiet kid that no one ever really had any negative dealings with at all.
Exactly. Perfect scenario for MK Ultra training, and you know, and he was also a member of the Clareton Sportsman Club, but apparently he tried out for the gun club at school and didn't make the first team and didn't make the second team either, and then nobody really heard about him. He just sort of went unnoticed. So I thought that was kind of interesting, a kid that went unnoticed, really scholarly, quiet, has a kitchen job, becomes this infamous shooter. I'm going, definitely he's got to, with everything that we know about MK Ultra training and influences, he sounds like the perfect candidate for that.
Isn't a loner, isn't that the profile though for those kinds of guys? Just
Well, it seems like it's from the few that I'm aware of, it's definitely a pattern, right? I mean, you do have guys that have like a wicked criminal history, and then they do something like that gains them a lot of notoriety because it's so vile.
Right.
But a lot of these shooters, they do kind of come out of nowhere. Like same with the Las Vegas shooter, right?
Yes.
Kind of came out of nowhere. That's never really fully explained his motivation. Justin Bork in Canada, this guy here, you know, some of those school shooters had more of a mental health history for sure, and were actively writing about their plans, about what they were going to do. And so there was probably indicators that people kind of explained away, and maybe that's the case here too. But you hear, I mean, anecdotally, that's even what you hear about serial killers all the time, right? Oh, he seemed like such a regular guy. I can't believe that this was him.
Yeah.
So the narrative, as we know it, is that this kid snuck up on a roof and was able to, I guess he did it through iron sights. He didn't even use a scope, and took his shots at Trump, and they dispatched him. And that was the end of that. And that was, so it looked like it was a lapse in security, or it was meant to look like it was just a lapse in security. Yeah. Well, we'll dig into that. I know you're chomping at the bit. Let's show people how this went down, though. So there's the map of the situation. The sniper, Trump was just off in the center there, and the shooter was 390 feet, 118 meters, and they say, I think it was 118 yards or something like that. So that's my measurements. I could be off by a few feet, a few yards. And then the sniper that took him out is on the roof, just to the left of or right of Trump there. So that's kind of how that went down. And then, but however, the sniper already had his gun in the right direction towards the shooter. Watching the videos, and we'll pull one up here. This is two videos of the sniper, and you can see, now that you see how the layout goes, you can see that the sniper,
and you know, that's a little bit old. This truck's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened. Took over, and look what happened to us.
Just playing this one because on the second one, you can see how long it takes before the actual shooting happens. So he's there, and then they pan away. We're having video troubles again. So this isn't, I made the mistake of announcing that we were going to be doing this show. And so they mess with our Wi-Fi. So I shouldn't have announced it today. So they don't expect us to go on until tomorrow. So basically there was that video showed a good 10 to 15 seconds before the shots happened. So that sniper had him in his sights for a very long time. So why wouldn't he, you know, here's the thing. They'd watch him climb to the roof. They'd watch him pull that gun out of the case or have a gun slung over his shoulder, and then be, if it's not preloaded, loading it up, but also getting him in his sights. It's going to take a long time to get somebody in an iron sight and then finally take the shot. Right. So he had to pull back to, you know, it's a semi-auto, I'm assuming. So that's a lot of time that they're watching this guy fiddle with a gun. Why wouldn't they have taken the shot, or did they have to wait until shots are fired?
No, they definitely don't have to wait until shots are fired. And I know, like, I've seen one of the posts that you sent me ahead of time where, you know, this guy anonymously claiming that he had the guy in his sights and he was being like kind of stonewalled by the head of Secret Service, waiting kind of like for the green light to shoot. That's not how we're trained, especially in the police world. Like, I think maybe in the military, if they're doing like a planned sniper kill, they might have to wait for authorization to go. Something like that scenario might exist. Maybe. I don't know. I've never been an army sniper. But in the police world, if you see a lethal threat, you engage it. Like, that's how I was trained. You're not going to sit there and wait for Buddy to kill someone and then be like, okay, now I'm justified to shoot him. I'll just wait for him to commit a murder first. Like, that's not how we're trained. And I'm fairly confident in saying that the Secret Service is not trained that way either.
I would imagine. So
I think that's kind of, I suspect that's kind of a bogus post. However, when I watched that video where you see the sniper in the background, like I saw him, he's looking through his rifle, his head kind of pops up like he's looking over his scope, and then he gets back down on the rifle right away again. And then you hear a pop, probably the initial shots from the shooter. And then I thought I saw his rifle move as if like he shot, and you could almost see the recoil of he's got his rifle set up in, like, it's called a hog saddle, right? That little bracket that holds his gun on the top of the tripod. Yes. And you see his gun kind of move, and then he gets back down on the rifle. So it's possible that maybe he was like sitting there looking and trying to figure out exactly what he was seeing. Right. Because, I mean, things do look different, especially like we don't know the contour of the roof line or anything. From the images that I've seen, I didn't see any like obvious like cover and concealment that the hostile shooter would have had available. Right. But it's possible that the counter sniper was like trying to confirm what he was seeing, right? Because you have to have positive target identification before you can shoot. Right. Right. Because, I mean, if all of a sudden you shoot at something, it's like, oh shit, that wasn't a person, that wasn't a bad guy with a gun. Like, right. Oops. I just, now I'm in trouble for, you know, negligent discharge of a firearm. So it's possible that he might have been just trying to like get positive target ID. But it did seem like, man, a lot of things would have had to happen for that to be the case, right? Like, how does what I have said is, like, I cannot imagine a scenario where the Secret Service or the FBI will be able to articulate how that 20-year-old kid got that close to begin with in broad daylight with a gun, got up onto one of the very few rooftops that appear to be in that area, and was able to like crawl into position, move into his position, and get proned out into a prone shooting position without someone engaging him before he got shots off.
Right. Now people could see him from the ground.
Exactly. Right. And so maybe that's why the sniper was looking over there, because it probably got called in. And so he's on his gun looking, like trying to figure out, okay, what is it? What's going on over there? Maybe they would have had a ground team trying to get there to like intercept and take him into custody or something before it became like a shooting scenario. Right. But still, like, man, there's a lot of things that have to happen for that kid to get into that position. And I just can't imagine a scenario where they will be able to justify that.
So that raises another question for me. It would seem to me, now I don't know anything about security, so this is why we have you here. It would seem to me that if snipers were going to cover Trump, and it was a very low security area, like an open air area, like we discussed, if you look where the shooter is, I would imagine they'd have another sniper there, because it's close. It's super close.
I think that would be wise, right? To have multiple sniper teams in multiple locations that can like cover multiple angles. Right. Like, you know, one of the things you do recce's and advances ahead of time, right? And you try and like, as a former counter sniper myself, if that was my role, if I was doing the plan, I would go ahead of time. I'd figure out, okay, where's the president going to be? Where's he going to be speaking? What is looking in on him?
Right.
from like 360 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have to look around and be like, okay, where are all the threat areas as I'm like doing my scan? Okay, and how am I going to position people to cover all of those areas?
Right.
And I mean, so looking at the imagery here, we can't see anything that would be like off the image, but obviously the roof where the shooter was appears to be a very obvious target location that you would want to cover. And, if you don't have tons of like sniper resources, well, you always have the option of putting like a uniform cop up on the roof, right? Or at least like a patrol around the building to make sure that someone can't like get up on top of it.
Right.
There's all kinds of options available to you, based on what your resources are in order to mitigate someone gaining access to a shooting position.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was looking at this picture going, there's way too many roofs that are empty. Or that were left empty. And when you have a gentleman like Trump coming in, and you already know that people are going to be excitable on this day, and we already know there's a whole lot of mishmash between the Democrats and the Republicans, you would think there would be a whole lot of protection on these rooftops, in and among the trees, in and among the parking lot, and definitely no guys getting in there with a gun and climbing up on a roof without being noticed or pulled down or something. So it just seems really, really suspicious to me that that was even allowed and that certain rooftops were left empty.
Mm-hmm. Just before you get into answering that, just so we don't leave any stone unturned, just north or south of where that sniper dot is on the third roof over, there were 2 more snipers there. Now, I'm not sure if they have to always be in pairs, but it's not like they didn't have the personnel. They were there. And we're back. It looks like we're getting messed with again, which I actually love because it tells us when we're over the target. So we have our internet speed is just fine, and we're having problems playing videos, and then we're having problem connecting to Danny. And we just asked about a second sniper team and how would he get on the roof at all, and you were just going to go into that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you had mentioned something about like where that red dot sniper indicator is on the image.
Yes.
Like 2 roof lines, let's say to the south of that, but that same 3 roof complex, there was another team, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that would indicate to me that they're both posted on that same complex so that they can both teams can be looking out to try and provide like a 360-degree coverage.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sure there would be some debate as to whether or not that's the best option. But again, it's, we're limited as to what we can see on this image, right? I don't know what the surrounding area looks like because typically in my time working with the Secret Service and kind of like a loose SOP was, you want to be able to cover at least like 1,000 meters out. Right. And so any potential threat area that could be within that like 1,000-meter range, you're expected to be able to have eyes on it and to have the ability to engage if need be. Because like, this kid got really close, pretty, I don't know how he got that close, but it doesn't take a real sophisticated weapon system or a really trained person to make a shot at 150 meters, especially if they're proned out with any kind of a rifle.
Right.
But, like someone who's like a trained sniper who then decides to become like a hostile threat, they could be kilometers away.
Yes.
Right. Depending on how trained they are and what system they have. And so, are you going to worry about the sniper with a 50 cal that's like 3.5 kilometers away? Well, what are you going to do about that? You can't even see that far, right?
Exactly.
Even with optics for the most part. So, but if you can cover anything that's within about 1,000 meters, you're doing pretty good, right? You're going to be like the 99% solution to a hostile sniper target, a hostile sniper threat.
Right.
So, I mean, that's kind of their standard, right? Is they have to be able to cover anything that could be a potential threat area within 1,000 meters.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And is it standard protocol for them to be too? Because what we can see in the video is that, the one sniper who took the guy out, and then there's the two guys behind him, and yet nobody on that other roof. So I think we were going down that path of, is it
do they have to be in
typical?
pairs?
Yeah.
We're always in pairs, a sniper observer pair. So you'll have the primary shooter, and he'll usually be on like the bigger caliber weapon system.
Right.
And maybe like it might be semi-automatic, it might be a bolt action, depending on the deployment.
Mm-hmm.
So like for us, lots of times the primary sniper would either be on a 308 or a 338, something that could really reach out and touch somebody.
Yes.
Right.
And then the observer, their main job is to be like your spotter, right? To like hone you in on the target and give you your elevation, like your distance, your elevation, your windage, and to watch the target when you engage, so that if you hit, they call hit. If you miss, they give you a correction so that you can re-engage right away.
Right.
They're typically, well, in my experience anyway, they're typically on like a smaller weapon system,
Right.
because they're also responsible for your security.
Right.
Yes.
And so like it's kind of hard to be like really nimble and agile when you got this great big long heavy sniper rifle, right?
Yeah.
So typically like what the way most sniper observer pairs would run, based on my knowledge, would be like primary shooters on the big gun, secondary the observer is on like a smaller system, so he can still engage if he needs to, but he can also be a little bit more mobile, right? Like
Right.
if you start taking fire, he can defend you easier. Although, depending on what weapon you have, you both could run on the same system, and so that like you could, primary shooter, secondary shooter, so if you miss, this guy could see what you need to correct and take a second follow-up shot right away.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But that's pretty advanced. Like that's really advanced. Like I think that would be like special forces advanced.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So two narratives are emerging. Number one, not that we fall for the left-right debate, but the left is going, it's incompetence in security. That's mainly their narrative, and that's the mainstream narrative. And then you've got the right, all the alternative people like Alex Jones. They're saying it was an assassination by the deep state. So those are the two main narratives that are coming through. In incompetence, if it's incompetence, what they're saying is that Biden pared back the security detail. But we've been at Reawaken tours. Like you were saying, you've seen Trump live.
Yeah.
They have their own security details, and I just can't see his security guys being okay with this kind of lapse in security. And that's a weird thing to me, right? So or is that just it was something that could happen?
Well, I mean, in my experience working with the Secret Service, like they love Trump. You know what I mean? They love Trump. They love George W. because he treated them really well, right? Like especially like the tactical guys, like the cat guys and the counter sniper guys. They love them. So it would be hard to imagine them like being part of the hit, so to speak.
Right.
But granted, we've seen a lot of weird things the last few years.
Right.
And I mean, all my experience was also before the great COVID purge of people who love freedom.
Right.
I do think like there's definitely a level of incompetence as to how that guy could get as close as he got. But that also, the fact that he was able to get into that position to begin with is why so many people are questioning if it was an inside job, because normally that you would never be permitted to get that close to a president. You know what I mean?
No.
Exactly.
And it's not like he's hiding a pistol, like something that would be you know, you could get within 100 meters and then take some kind of Hail Mary pistol shot. Like he's carrying a rifle, right? It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to conceal a rifle in broad daylight.
Exactly. And we've all seen Trump in his motorcades. He's got massive amounts of securities as he's just driving around. So I can't imagine at his Trump rallies that security magically disappears.
No, no. But the motorcade people are mostly like BGs, right? Like bodyguards.
Okay.
And so they're going to be really preoccupied with like what's right in tight close to him and making sure that they have like a secured egress and, you know, security, like making sure that the vehicles are taken care of so that if they have to make an extraction, they can, and they don't have to worry about like, oh crap, did someone plant a bomb in our path, or did someone plant a bomb on one of the vehicles, something like that. So they're going to be pretty task heavy already with like the crowd and what's right and tight to him. But you know, the counter snipers and the site security people and the local law enforcement are like those outer layers.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's what we do know as far as any kind of narrative goes. What we do know is if it were a deep state hit, like they're saying, they could have done it 1,000 ways just to take him out. So whatever this is, whoever's narrating it, or what, if it's anything beyond incompetence, then they wanted it to be public. They wanted people to see this. They wanted to make a statement either way, whoever, you know, if there's something beyond just a complete, I don't know, unfortunate series of events, you know? So not only that, I think in an age of 1,000 cameras, it was set up in a way that would be easily pulled apart by a lot of people. There's a lot of aspects to it that we still haven't even talked about yet.
Well, there's a lot of things that don't make sense for sure. Like how could this happen? Like, I mean, my personal opinion is that like the Secret Service is not as like high speed as Hollywood would make you believe, but they take their job pretty seriously, you know, and they don't usually hesitate at throwing a lot of resources at things, right? Like they roll a pretty heavy package, like way bigger than anything you would see for another foreign government, except for maybe like Israel. So I don't know, like, you know, I mean, personally, for me, it's hard to know unless I've actually been on the ground and seen what it actually looks like in person. Right. But based on everything that we've seen and the fact that like, it's pretty clear there was some American involvement in the assassination of previous presidents and presidential candidates, like it's not that much of a stretch at all to think that like there would be an attempt on Trump. You know, like he's clearly the front runner. They just had a massive debacle with the debate. I think he's, unless they do something to cheat or get rid of him, is a very high probability he's going to become the next president again.
Well, even the Democrat donors, the big celebrity donors are now, after holding the big donor celebration and bringing in all this money just a few days ago, now they're stepping out and saying, pull Biden, he's got to go, he's got to go, he's got to go. And so it's looking like they're even losing their big money backers if things don't change. So it kind of makes sense that maybe they would try and do something.
Well, I mean, on that level, sure. The dirty Democrats, just knowing that their election fraud isn't going to happen again, because, you know, we've been
eyes are
very
on,
active
for sure,
in watching how they're debunking all of that election stuff. So I don't think they're going to get away with that again at all. And so it could just be dirty Democrats, Biden and his crew, Obama and Clinton's and all that stuff, just saying, you know, let's just do the final solution on this one. It could be that simple.
Or they're, you know, you've got RFK running and not getting a whole lot of attention, you know, being cut out of debates. Is there a third runner because it doesn't look like Biden will probably make it. So it's looking like Trump. But then you've got these independents that are running. Is there an independent that has come forward and kind of put in their own plans to take Trump out? It might not be Democrats.
Maybe.
Could be somebody completely different outside the realm.
I mean,
I would find it very hard to believe that RFK would be part of that.
Yeah.
I think the Clintons would be way more on my suspect list. But you know, I just think he's a threat to the establishment, right? But so is RFK. Like, I mean,
Correct.
the Secret Service won't even provide him protection. And I think he's the first
Exactly.
presidential candidate ever that hasn't received that. And that's a decision made by the White House.
Yes.
And especially considering the family history, like you think that's a no-brainer, right? That they would provide him with protection, but he's got to fund his own private protection through Gavin DeBecker and Associates.
yes.
Yes.
Which is a very switched-on company, and I would probably prefer them to the Secret Service if I was him. But they cost a lot more
Yeah.
for him personally, for his campaign.
Mhm.
Right.
You know, nothing would surprise me anymore, to be honest. I think I think that there's a level of desperation
Mhm.
now, especially with it's so evident that like Biden cannot beat him.
Exactly.
And so there's going to be desperate times, call for desperate measures, and they probably are banking on the fact that some people would be happy to see Trump taken out.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, even Biden, put out a few days ago that,
The bullseye thing.
the bullseye thing.
Can you imagine if the situation was reversed?
Oh my God.
Trump would be in jail already.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
He would have been arrested.
I mean, look,
within seconds of them catching the shooter, he would have been arrested.
do you remember the outrage in Canada when Danielle Smith said putting Stephen Guilbeault in the crosshairs?
Yes.
That was instantly, and nothing even happened to him. So
Right.
if
Right.
Trump, considering January 6th and everything else that has happened,
Right.
if Trump had said something like that and then someone had taken a pot shot at Biden, Trump would be crucified for it.
Of course.
Exactly.
Of course.
Yeah, but I mean, this is kind of something I've come to not too long ago, but I'd say within a few months, and I can't believe it took me this long to realize this, but people like us, we act in the world as if the law and the truth matters.
How
Right.
dare us?
Whereas the people who are, the people that are in charge of the Democrat Party, probably even a lot of Republicans,
Yeah.
and in Canada, the same thing for liberals, conservatives, I don't think the law or the truth matters to them at all.
No.
It
It
They're
doesn't
untouchable.
factor. I don't think it factors into their decision-making process. And some of them are obviously willing to kill
Yes.
in order to meet their, they can justify in their own mind using murder as a weapon in order to, for their ideology of their greater good. And I think that's something that we, it's easy to get super outraged and angry and frustrated at the hypocrisy, the clear double standard that applies.
Yeah.
But once I kind of realized that, I'm like, well, now I'm not as triggered as much, because I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's just what I expect from them, because they don't care about the truth or the law. Doesn't make it right, obviously. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything about it, but they don't care. They don't care about the law. They don't care about the truth or evidence.
No.
None of that matters. All that matters to them is messaging, influence public opinion, so that they just need enough of the population to believe what they're saying. And that's all that matters. And that's how they insulate themselves from investigation. It's how they insulate themselves from any kind of scrutiny or accountability.
Well, and the fact that they're the ones that make the legislation that our courts interpret,
Yes.
allows them to get away with so much more and put in the loopholes and, cabinet confidences and section 15 of the criminal code that, gives them the de facto government the ability to escape prosecution, and those that they give orders to escape prosecution because of immunity.
Yes.
Right. So when you've got that kind of power wielding at your fingertips, I can totally see where you would lose sight of truth and honesty and natural law and morals and ethics. You just want to get done whatever it is that you're focused on, whatever your agenda or your goals are. And it's not right. And they do forget about the people that they're actually working for. And because of the case of Little Child, where the courts actually said you don't have to do, as an MP or MPP, a government official, you don't have to do what the people want. You can get elected and then go with your own agenda. It doesn't matter.
Right.
So when you've got that kind of power thrown at you, and the courts back you, and the police back you, and the military back you, and then you've got this massive party and money backing you, I get where you can lose complete sight of humanity and everything that matters.
I mean, I also sometimes wonder to myself, like, what would I be capable of if I knew that I had top cover from the most powerful people on the planet?
Right?
Right? Like, I could probably do some pretty dark stuff if I knew that I could get away with it.
Right.
I mean, I like to think that I wouldn't, but I've had nasty thoughts too. But what keeps me in check is the fact that, like, oh well, that wouldn't work out so well for my kids.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it would be easy to get sucked into that power vortex if you knew that you were untouchable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, part of the reason I was hoping to have you here is because it's easy to go off the rails with speculation. Like we've got a list of 5 different possible scenarios, all more crazy than the last one, right? It's all fake. It was all made up. Just like Alex Jones has come out and said, the deep states try to assassinate Trump. And this is the guy who lost all his stuff because he called Sandy Hook fake, right? And he's not questioning this at all, even though there are so many things to question, and he's not questioning it at all.
I think he's looking at dollar signs that he already got hit with over the Sandy Hook, that he's going, I'll just pull back a little bit before I make accusations.
Right. In the other scenario could be that Trump staged the whole thing himself to become hero status. So it's just crazy, but the part of the reason I wanted you here is because, do you remember the Victoria shooting in Victoria, BC? It was the 2
bank
kids.
robbery?
Yeah, the 2 kids. Remember that?
Yep.
And I started investigating that. I got photos from somebody who lived across the street. Nobody had access to these photos, so I got them. And the way it was positioned, he was wearing a mask, but the way it was positioned, it looked like mannequins. So it looked like it was all staged. So I went totally public, like, this is fake, and I ran with it without even doing my due diligence, which burned me, and I've learned since. But part of the reason I pulled back on it is because somebody you were talking to talked to me and said you had actually phoned the police and checked it out, and they're saying no, this is all legit. So I finally pulled back, and then I realized it was a mask and all that stuff. And it's easy to go crazy with your speculation based on what you perceive you see, and 9 times out of 10 it's not that. 9 times out of 10 the answer is just so less dramatic. And I
think most of the time it's not as dramatic as you see it spun up online. But the problem with today's media landscape is you can't believe anything that they say anyway. Right. So, like, what is the source of the truth? I mean, let's be honest. Like, do I trust the Secret Service and the FBI to tell me the truth? No. Do I trust the media? No. Do I trust Alex Jones completely? No. Like, I mean, I don't think he's totally off the mark that it could be the deep state trying to assassinate Trump, but I'm also not just going to, like, buy it because he said it.
Well, he was right about the gay frogs, but other than that, I don't know.
Yes.
I'm waiting for David Icke to come out and say it because that guy
He's
I'm going to
silent
believe.
right now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, hey, I mean, I'm kind of at the point right now where it's like, okay, there's tons of information out there. I don't know what's factual. I don't know what's true. I know what I can see with my own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's like, what can I personally verify, or what can someone that I know personally and I really, really trust can verify? That's kind of my criteria right now. Like, I don't just jump on the bandwagon with stuff that I see online anymore. I mean, I definitely probably have fallen guilty of that in the past, but I know like there's so much information out there, and
Mhm.
you know that I've been sucked into it. I've seen it before. I know I can't trust the media, like the official news media, that I don't even give them, like they're just talking heads to me.
I'll bring this up while you're talking. This was posted like within 10 minutes of the shooting.
Secret Service review. Yeah, the Washington
CNN.
Post and CNN, like,
Yeah.
we can't say that someone shot at him.
Right.
He falls at rally.
Yeah.
Loud noises at rally.
Exactly. And then about half an hour later, they're all like, an incident happened. They didn't
And
mention
it's
it.
like,
So there's your
shit,
news
we
for
have
you.
to say it was a shooting. It's so
Right.
obvious that it was now. Reluctantly, we have to admit he was shot at.
Exactly.
I kind of struggle a little bit with this scenario where Trump would have faked it himself. Because I mean, like, I guess, you know, you could have like a fake wound, you know, something like that, but there's no way you're gonna like put a real shooter up there and be like, hey, just graze me in the ear.
Yeah.
Because like
Your
one
sight.
mistake and it's like, oh crap,
Yeah.
you missed by an inch and shot me through the eyeball and through the back of my brain.
Exactly.
And oh, by the way, don't use a scope.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's even in the realm of possibility.
And I'd like to think that he wouldn't want to take out his supporters. You know,
No.
there was a
100%.
50-year-old
Yeah,
gentleman.
there's real people died, right?
Yeah,
Corey
Corey Compatore, 50-year-old volunteer fire chief,
Firefighter, yeah.
died. And then 2 more people were injured. And, you know, Trump's team has set up a GoFundMe for the families of the injured. And I know as of earlier today, it was at $340,000 US dollars. I'm sure it's much higher by the time this show goes to air. But I'd like to think that you wouldn't set something like that up with real bullets where people, real live innocent people, could get hurt.
Right.
Well, I just think the risk is way too high for Trump himself.
Exactly.
Right. And the whole
Right,
thing,
one inch would have been a bullet through the eye and into the skull.
Now, I did see a picture, though, earlier this morning. Actually, no, maybe it was about an hour before we went live, where they were showing a picture of Trump's jacket, and he had like a bullet hole here. And they're like, oh, thank goodness he was wearing his vest.
His body
so I'm
armor.
going, did he really get hit there, or is that just somebody with
Photoshop,
their
I think.
photoshopping stuff?
It's possible because I mean, it sounds like the shooter probably got off about, what is it, like 5 to 8 rounds, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like that he could easily have a spread of that distance, right? Especially if he's just shooting iron sights, and just pulling on the trigger because kind of out of a quasi state of panic.
Right.
Me personally, I think the shooting was real.
Right.
Mhm.
I think it's totally within the realm of possibility that maybe the shooter had help getting into position.
Yes.
For sure. Because I mean, I can't imagine a scenario where he would get in undetected if everything was being run as tight as it should be.
Right.
Exactly. And for everybody to be pointing up and showing him on their cameras, hey, there's a guy. Yeah, if the crowd saw him, most certainly the security saw him.
And I mean, sure, he could have very well been paid to do it, or like, you know, incentivized to do it, or he could look at the coverage on Trump. Like they basically they try and portray him to be like literally the second coming of Hitler and like the biggest threat to America that there is. Yeah. And when you think about like a 20-year-old kid who's been hearing that for like the last 8 years of his life, like basically from, you know, like a preteen up until 20 years old. It's like, I got to do, it's not outside, you know, it wouldn't be a stretch to think like a 20-year-old kid he's like indoctrinated enough, or even like you mentioned MK Ultra, like it's basically like a form of mind control, right? Like the constant barrage of like, Trump is evil, Trump is the enemy, Trump is gonna destroy this country, for like some 20-year-old kid to be like, I'm gonna do something about this.
Right.
But man, I would not be surprised at all if he had help getting into position.
So what about the scenario is that they just had a gap in security there? Is that even possible?
Wow.
It's like the Israeli dome all over again.
Seriously, like I said, I can't imagine a scenario where that could happen. I mean, without like, granted, I've seen people get pretty complacent on protective jobs when you're going like nonstop, especially if you're traveling with him all the time on the campaign trail and you're not home and you're burnt out and you're just go. Like, you know, I've seen people on rooftops doing this, right? Like scrolling on the phone, because I mean, probably not when the protectee's outside, but like if he's inside a building, you know, if he's inside a building and there's like, you know, you're basically just covering the site outside.
Right.
But man, that would be, I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe that you could just totally write it off to just a gap in security. Like there's just way too many things would have to align perfectly for a kid to get that close in that environment without someone seeing him, engaging him. He's a kid. He's 20.
And he's a kid. He's a kid. Exactly. He's not a grown man. He's not a soldier. He's not, his brain is still forming. His body's still growing. He's a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if he's got iron sights, then he's obviously not a big planner either.
No.
Well, if he's a big planner, he's not trying to get up on the middle of a rooftop in broad daylight, like no ghillie suit, no concealment, no cover. You know, and like 150 meters, like, man, I can see you with my naked eye that close. Like a trained sniper is going to be like as far away as possible, like cover and concealment, and like try and be as undetected as possible with the proper weapon system and the proper optic.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this he's an amateur.
Yeah. So we've eliminated like the total incompetence. We've eliminated like the fantastical stories. So we, somewhere in the middle, I think we all agree that something happened and this was a setup and that he was able to get in there because somebody created a gap for him to do so. That seems to be the most likely scenario without being there. This is speculation, of course, but
I wouldn't be surprised at all if he had some kind of help.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It solidified his presidency, I think, though.
Oh, I do. I think it, you know, if someone was trying to take him out to stop him from becoming president, I think it was an epic fail.
100%. The turn and wait just a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know anything more presidential than that, more courageous.
The only thing that I can think of that had a moment like that was Bush Jr. in 9/11 when he's like, I hear you. Yeah. Right. The world hears you. And that was a pretty iconic moment for a president off the cuff as well. But
you know, personally, I mean, maybe I'll like kind of throw a scenario at you. You guys have probably thought of it already, but like if the shooter had hit and been successful, I think there is a desire to push the nation to civil war.
Agreed.
I think like had they been successful in killing Trump, I think it would have been game on. I think the people who like the MAGA people who love Trump, they would have been looking for heads to roll.
Agreed.
Totally agreed. They're doing nothing but trying to destabilize. You know, we've got our own prime minister who, by the way, did a Twitter post on the issue, but has never done an official statement. Here we are like over 24 hours later, and our prime minister, our leader of Canada, is not done an official statement on this incident.
Maybe he's involved.
Yep. Wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it.
I'm sure he cares a lot about Donald Trump's health.
So, but they are destabilizing. Our own prime minister started by saying this is going to be a post-national state. So he has to destroy what is to get what he wants it to be. We have just done a show on Carney. Carney's coming in, and he's a dangerous man. So there's a few scenarios. The Democrats win, possible civil war, because it's going to be cheating at that point, and they're going to make it so obvious it's cheating. Or Trump wins and the Democrats start burning the country to the ground, in which case the patriots are bound to defend their country. But if you get Trump in the States, and that's Carney here, that destabilizes both nations, right? Because Carney is a dangerous globalist, and I don't know if he's on your radar yet, but he's bad.
And if you're following the UN and the BIS and the IMF and the CBDCs and the digital IDs all coming in, and if you've seen the maps of the UN basically cutting up the world into 10 segments versus 198 segments, I'm positive Carney is the guy that they're going to put in charge of the North American segment. So at the end of the day, does it matter if Trump, Biden, RFK get in? Because I think Carney is going to be the guy that takes over all of North America. So maybe that was another scenario. Take out Trump because he's looking like the favorite. Nobody wants Biden in. RFK, they're just keeping him down as far as they can. Maybe this is how they bring Carney in to save North America, so to speak.
Wow. I mean, I think you'd definitely have to eliminate Trump and RFK from the picture then.
Right.
Because I mean, you would have to have a Democrat president, I think, in order for for Carney to kind of have that sway over America.
Possibly, yeah. And just going back to what you say, like, I think you're right. I think it was a setup for civil war. But even if they missed Trump, I alluded to it earlier. I think this whole thing was set up in a way to be completely dismantled on social media. Like, it wasn't even slick. It wasn't well done, and they weren't hiding anything. It was so poorly executed, and I think that was on purpose.
Well, that's very possible, right? I mean, I think they've already started floating, like the conspiracy theory terminology is already being floated around in the mainstream about this, right?
Right.
But whatever, that means nothing to me anymore.
No.
Call me whatever you want. I don't care.
No, but I think you're right. I think it's heading towards civil war in the States because they have to take the States out to
I think that's a desired outcome.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Well, and to bring in the CBDCs as well in the one world currency, they've got to take out the States. And right now with the Iran dollar, the oil no longer backing up the US dollar, there's already instability happening just around the money world.
Like with BRICS?
With BRICS, yeah, that's another big one. And, Putin has already announced that they're coming out with their central digital currency in the fall. China's got their stuff happening, gold being the big backer behind the BRICS institutions. Canada has no gold. I don't know where the state stands on gold, but I don't think their gold reserves are what China and Russia have.
Huge. U.S. still has a huge gold reserve. Yeah, but Goldman Sachs plundered a lot of it.
Exactly.
Back in 2008.
But I think those BRICS nations are trying to buy up as much as they can to make sure that they control as much of the mineral resources, like the actual metals, as much as they can.
Right.
Exactly.
And I saw that when I worked overseas. Like, China is buying up the developing world. Like, when I was in Africa and when I was in Southeast Asia, all the new buildings, all the new roads, everything was Chinese infrastructure. They're basically coming in and paying for everything to basically, in my view, so those other those governments and those host countries are like beholden to them.
Exactly. Well, when they talk about foreign interference in our elections and nobody's outing who was involved, a big part of me is saying, is it really foreign interference when China owns most of our natural resources, owns a lot of our mining, a lot of our farmland, owns our food processing plants? Is it actual foreign interference anymore because they have so many investments here? I would say they're probably a major shareholder of Canada. So is it really foreign interference anymore? I don't think so.
Or is it just good business?
Yeah,
right.
protecting their own national interests. Yeah, exactly. That's all it is at this point. So yeah. So I don't know. I guess we'll just wait to see how this stuff unfolds. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that there's a bigger push to do a civil war. And I think at some point the immigrants that are landed in both countries are going to get activated as well. So
that's very possible. I mean, you hear a lot about the instability that is coming with especially into the United States.
Yes.
I was just listening to an interview between Sean Ryan and Mark Lamb. He's that sheriff, he's kind of a famous sheriff down on the border in Arizona.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the stuff that they see down there, and it's like, it's
bad.
It's real bad. It's the human trafficking and the drug trafficking is just bonkers down there. And he said they'll go out and patrol in their own vehicles and helicopters, and like there'll be miles and miles of unguarded border where like you can't even see the border patrol people because I mean, for one, they probably don't have enough people, and for two, they're so busy processing these massive groups that like they'll come across groups being smuggled across the border, this Arizona sheriff, but it's not their jurisdiction to intercept and deal with it because it's the border patrol's jurisdiction.
Yes.
Right.
And so it's such so many big complicated problems that all seem to be woven together that like it seems sometimes it's, people call me a conspiracy theorist, but at the same time it's like, well, how can you not be when you see like the like how it seems to be so deliberate, the destruction of everything that seems to make the country work.
Yes.
Right.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at this point, you see these things, they just don't add up. We go to the government websites and things don't add up. The safe and effective right there, that should be enough for you. We read the contract that says we can't guarantee it's safe and effective, and they're out there saying safe and effective. How can you believe what the government says at this point?
Well, and that's the thing.
Murder.
Well, their own websites, their own actual documentation, contradicts what they're saying in public. But very few people will go and read that.
Yeah.
Right. They can call me a conspiracy theorist. Like, well, no, but Health Canada says it right here. Right. But
right.
No, don't want to believe it.
Right. The problem though for a lot of people is that they believe the narrative they're given, because if they start believing something else, that's
their world
much
falls
scarier
apart.
than
I know from experience. I'm sure you guys do too, right?
That's right.
Don't we?
I just watched The Matrix recently with my kids, and like that whole red pill, blue pill scene with Morpheus comes up. I'm like, pay attention to this. This is important. And then when Cypher, the guy who kind of turns on them, talks about wanting to take the blue pill again, I'm just like, I've had my moments where I'm like, oh man,
me too.
Life was so much simpler when I didn't think that there was like a plan to take over the world.
Right.
Agreed. And we say that all the time. I had a great life.
Me too.
Before I got red pilled, I had a fantastic life. Life was good. I had friends. I played golf. I was in the theater. I played soccer. I coached soccer. Parties. It was wonderful. This life is not so much fun. It's not.
It takes a real effort. It takes no, you can't unsee what you've seen, but it takes so much effort just to do things to feel joy again, because you're constantly thinking about like, holy shit, how do I prepare for what's coming?
Totally.
Well, and not only that, trying to think about moving forward. what's next? How do
Yeah.
you plan for next week when you don't even know what tomorrow could bring, because you know so much and you know their plans are moving full steam ahead. You just don't know the dates of their plans. So how far can you actually plan ahead? And
Well,
that's where I'm at.
I think that might also be a desired outcome of the PSYOP for people like us who see it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's like for the people that are just like kind of going along their lives as if nothing is happening. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
perfect. We don't have to worry about them. But these people over here, we're going to overwhelm them with so much to think about that
Yes.
Right.
it's like it's hard for them to even be productive, to live like an enjoyable, productive life, because they're constantly just like, what now?
Yeah. Exhaustion. You go through,
Exactly.
mental
Totally.
exhaustion.
You go through like mental burnout.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do. Yeah, we've really gotten good at just ignoring all the pucks coming at the net and just trying to work on the ones that matter. And so we've learned that discipline on not to get overwhelmed by it, but not easy.
It takes a while to get there though.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Definitely.
find anyway, like I think I'm there or pretty close to there right now, but
Right.
man, it took me a long time.
Yeah, us too, because you feel powerless and you gotta get control over it. And you just realize you just gotta pick your battles and trust that other people are doing their job too. And
Yeah, that's right.
about
Focus on the big priorities.
Exactly.
yeah, I think at some point it's not about winning and losing for me. It's more like I just got to be able to tell my kids I stood up
You can
and
say hi if you want.
silent.
Sorry. You can say hi.
Hey,
Hi. Oh, look
You
how
remember?
big.
You remember
they are.
them?
Oh my
We've
gosh.
been to their house.
So big.
Yeah, more than once. Okay.
Yeah.
You came swimming at the house.
you had a good time.
That's right.
We remember. Yeah.
In fact, you ran past me down the stairs, come flying back up and out to the pool. If memory serves me correctly.
Cannibal.
And they would for sure. They're shy.
I love it.
Oh, well, Danny, thank you so much for shedding some proper light on this whole thing and dispelling some myths and filling in some gaps for us. We really appreciate your time.
And I'm glad we're not the only ones thinking about possibly some MK Ultra, possibly some incompetence, possibly some help getting up on that roof, and possibly the outcome hoping to be a civil war or civil unrest. So I'm glad we're not the only ones in that realm.
That's right. And I think we've lost Danny again. So problems, they like to shut Danny down. They like to shut us down. And I think we're just having one of those days. So I think we're going to end it there. But
I think it means we're over the mark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yet again.
Yeah, we love being over the target. So it's encouraging as much as they don't want it to be. It is. So we're going to end it there. Thanks for watching, everybody. And that is our Trump show.
We will see you Thursday. And as long as nothing goes wrong, I believe we have Dr. Mark Trozzi with us on Thursday as we do a COVID recap, where we were, where we are, and where we think it's going.
Right. Hindsight is 2020. We can look back and see the lies in real time, and that's going to be very powerful. Okay, everybody. Thank you for watching. We will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.